Another aspect, of course, is to try to find and to excavate some of the major political center of the kingdom. Unfortunately, so far we have not been able to excavate Banza Kongo for various and frustrating reasons. There is some excavation going on, but I will pass the topic right now. We have been working on the Congo DRC side, trying to find out around the Inkisi, which we know is a major river and major area of population with Kisantu. Near Kisantu, we have Banza-Nsudi, which was one of the capital of one of the major provinces, and Banza-Nsudi, Banza-Mbata, and Gongo-Bata. Those two areas are fairly important. The logistic to work in this area is a nightmare. We had to reopen something like 20 miles of track was being left over since, and the children under 15 never seen a truck in their life, so it was quite interesting this summer. Nevertheless, we got some results, but it's very difficult to try to pinpoint. And as a missionary in the 18th century noted, there is, even in those major, and he was speaking of Songo, which is another major capital, the density of the habitat is extremely, the huts are extremely scattered, even in the major provincial political center. This is all Banza-Nsudi look like, so we've been excavating on this hill, which is almost a mile long, and so trying to find some archaeological structure on such a dispersed kind of settlement is very tricky. So what we do is we put a test pit every 50 meters, and we kind of put a whole checkboard on the whole hill. It looked beautiful, more or less, from space. So we had the pleasure to discover last week that it was already on Google Earth, our excavation. Sometimes we were a bit drunk, but never. We had the good fortune to find here a cimetery from the 18th century, probably. And so that's how it looked like. This is the dry season. That's one of the reasons we were able to work there. And unfortunately, the whole area is being completely deforested because of the pressure for charcoal for Kinshasa. When I visited the place for the first time, it was back in 1972. It was still more or less of a sacred wood, and now what's left is what you see. We found this cimetery, which is quite interesting, with several elites material inside, and we have so far managed to work out a basic radiocarbon sequence calibrated with one early occupation in the 14th century, and then much more evidence in the 16, 17, and up to the modern time. And sorry, yes, another, yeah. The missionaries and the Christianization have also left some trace, and we're also able to see some of it. Some in Gongo-Bata, one of the older church, was excavated in 1938, finding the remain of a church. And inside the church were several graves with some crosses that had been recuperated by the missionaries and put into the entrance of another mission church. And we proceed the same way in Gongo-Bata to try to pinpoint some archaeological structure. And also on satellite now. And that's how the church looked like. So you have the step leading to the church, and in the background you have what was the church. We found this interesting structure, and we think it was the basement of a wooden cross sitting just in front of the church, and next to the church, on the other side of the church, we found what very much looked like the base of a missionary house, and the whole thing is amazingly similar of this kind of watercolor, where you see the church, the cross in front, and the cell of the Capuchin just next to it. So really, archaeology just confirmed that the Capuchin had a kind of standard settlement pattern that they were reproducing around. We were also quite surprised to discover in a pit under the cell of the monk, of the Capuchin, the remain of a European bronze bell broken. So it may be the testimony of an earlier church was being destroyed. We know that there was a lot of conflict. You know that the missionaries were extremely brave, and they will go against the sorcerer all by themselves. And sometimes we know also that people were not that happy about it, and they will eventually burn down some of the house and church. This may be evidence of earlier church, and bell was being destroyed by people unhappy. We found in some of the graves very interesting crucifix, various shape. Also Portuguese-made Chinaware. In Banzansundi we found an iron sword with also, and interestingly, in Banzansundi, iron sword are still, sword of honor are still in use. This elder, I met him and I took a photo of him in 1972. And when I went back, he was the only one still holding his sword of honors. And he was very proud to be able, because several other major regalia in that place had vanished in the time. Those are the detail of next to the sword, the iron sword, a cross and another crucifix. And another aspect to conclude, if we have 2 more minutes, another aspect to conclude is the impact of the center and periphery, both from a linguistic point of view and from an archaeological point of view.
Fast. I don't think we have time to elaborate this, but one of the latest case studies we'll be finishing is about prefix syncopation, and as this is illustrated here, the word for tree, it's muti, it's a mu prefix, but in certain Kongo varieties it has become m, and in still others it has become n. Nti, it's the same, it's a nasal, which is the same place of articulation as the consonant that follows. If we show that on the map, we see again that the northern group doesn't have it, but that it's attested in the rest of the Kongo dialect continuum. So it probably is also like Ngangula, something which spread through the Kongo area, and we tried to, okay, let's forget about this, we tried to look how it spread through time, because very exceptionally, which is not possible for any other Bantu language, we have language data going back to the 17th century, like this catechism. And what we see there is, this is Southern Kikongo. You see it immediately, everywhere has the mu prefix. So in the early 17th century, this process of prefix syncopation had not started yet. This is some years later, the vocabulary Kongense. What we see there in 1652 is that the process did start in Southern Kikongo. So we have empirical evidence for the start of language innovation. And what we actually show is that it spread from the South Kikongo area, where the kingdom capital was situated, to other parts of the kingdom. And we argue that it's a kind of speaking like the nobles do, that it's under influence of the way of speaking of the elite that this process diffused through the Kongo area. And interestingly enough, you have some correspondence in the archaeological material.
Yeah, as you know, it's almost over. textile as symbol of wealth and status is also very important. I will relate to the exhibit just next door. You have those beautiful baskets, and I think it's on display in the museum now. Interestingly enough, you have also pottery evidence from the 14th, 17th century of exactly the same kind of pattern. And the shape is also quite telling. If you think about the mpu, the head, and you think about it, it's quite amazing to see how similar they are. This kind of pattern is distributed through the area of the kingdom, so it may be also a symbol of connecting with the sophistication. Those are pottery from recent excavation in Kongo itself, displaying more or less the same kind of pattern. And also rock art is often overlooked. One of my students, Geoffroy Mich, is completing his PhD on it. And we have also very interesting evidence for dates, like in the 7th-9th century, already rock art in the caves. We have this famous attitude, typically of Kongo, which is dated from the 13th century, probably. And the cross, of course, as could be expected after the 15th century. So this is also a very interesting way to date some of the major motifs in Kongo art. To close, and because I just discovered it, looking at the catalog that I should have known because it's from our own museum, there is a very intricate cross that I had seen in rock shelter when I was surveying Lovo in many years ago. The cross of the Christ, the order of the Christ superposed with something else, and on the ivory horn just around the corner we have exactly the same kind of extremely specific motif, and I think we should really try to trace it and what's the origin of it. It's absolutely fascinating. And to conclude, I'll let you read because our time is way over. Thank you for your attention.